Hello everyone, this is General Hand Grenade. Welcome to my war room in Prince George, British Columbia. This is the second in the series of how-to videos on the game Global War 1936 to 1945. So this video will be dedicated to facilities. The facilities, they represent the important infrastructure in a zone. They can be built without the presence of a factory, so you don't need a factory to build a bunker or a coastal gun or an air base, or a naval base or whatever. You can just build them wherever you want, with some restriction. Like you couldn't build a naval base in a landlocked place, that's not allowed. And as far as, well, let's just get into factories and I'll show you. So, there it is. Somebody stole my stick. Okay, I got my stick, my trusty chopstick. Okay, so here we have minor factories right here, right? So that's a minor factory, and this is a major factory. We're looking at Japan here, obviously. So let's do a minor factory first, okay? So they can be damaged up to 5 points of damage, and that's when you're doing a strategic bombing raid. And I'm not going to show you that right now. Like, we'll get into strategic bombing raids later on in another video. But they can be damaged up to 5 points of damage, and if there's even 1 point of damage on there, then you can't use a minor factory because you're only able to produce 1 unit there. So if you had 1 point of damage, then that minuses that by 1, so you can't use it. Now you can upgrade to a major factory, but only only in a nation's home country. And we talked about that in the last video, what a home country is. So for Japan, this is the home country here. Like these territories across the water, even though they have Japanese roundels on them, those are not part of the home country. So you couldn't build a major factory, for instance, on Korea. There's just no way. You can only build them on here. So when you're upgrading a minor factory, you can only upgrade it on the home country here. You could, like I said, it could take up to 5 points of damage. It can be built in zones you did not own at the start of the game, as well as in the nation's home country. So you can build one of these anywhere as long as you own that zone, right? And if while you're constructing it, because here, let me just show you something here. When you do go to construct one, here's your ship and facility production chart here. So when you go to build one, you don't just buy it and put it on, right? Like, you have to start right here. So when you do, it has to be connected to a major factory in your home country via the supply path. And we talked about supply path in the last video as well. Now you can see how important that is, right? And supply path can go down an undamaged railway on land or from naval base to naval base in the water, provided that you're not being blockaded. If you need to know more clarification on that, then go back and watch the first video like you should have before you watch this one. So anyway, the whole time you're constructing this, like, you couldn't even say, okay, I'm going to put this minor factory here, or I'm going to buy it, and then I will acquire some land so that and I'll acquire that piece of railroad so that by the time I put it on, I can build it. No. You have to, the whole time you're building this, you have to have that supply path open for you to be able to put it on, okay? So, now you can't just, like in Axis and Allies, you can't just put it on and then put units on that turn. You have to own this factory at the start of your turn, and that goes for major factories as well. So you have to own a minor or a major factory at the start of your turn on the territory in order for you to be able to put units on that territory. So that's pretty self-explanatory. And the other thing is that you can build more than one of these in each zone. Like you could, here's another one down here. You could build 2 of these in here, so that you can put 2 units on here plus this one here. You can put units on that and put units on these ones as well. I don't think that there's a limit to how many you can put in a territory. I think you can just put as many as you want. Now these ones can be captured as well. Like this is a bad example because we're in Tokyo, so if Tokyo is captured, then Japan is pretty much sunk, right? But no matter where a minor factory is, you can go and take over that territory. Then you get that factory as well. But again, you can't just put units on there at the end of that turn. You had to own that factory at the start of your turn. So you would have to wait one more turn before you could place units on there if you've just captured that factory. Okay, so a major factory here, and that's this one here, or this one over here, that can produce 5 units a turn. And I screwed up. I just played a whole game there. Took me a couple weeks. I was going on 3 units a turn. So it's a good thing I'm making this rules video, because that helps me understand the rules better myself, because I'm going to have to go through the whole rule book again. And of course I'm going to read a bunch of it before I even make a video. So like the minor factory I said can take 5 points of damage. These things can take 20 points of damage. And then it produces 1 less unit for each point of damage. Like if you have 4 points of damage on there, even though there's still 16 left, even 4 points of damage means 4 less units, means you can only put 1 unit on this major factory here. So it can only be built or upgraded in the home territory, like I said. You couldn't build one in Korea in this case, and you can have more than 1 of them in a zone. So it does not say anything about a limit, so you can have 10 of them in this zone if you wanted to, but I can't see you wanting to put 50 units on 1 zone. You know, that's a lot of money to spend on that, isn't it? And it can be captured, but if it is captured, it turns into a minor factory. And unlike Axis and Allies, like if you capture somebody's major factory in Axis and Allies, and then you put your own minor factory on, and then say they take it back, it does not go back to a major, it stays as a minor, right? But in this game, Global War, if you had a major factory and somebody come along and they took it from you, then it goes to a minor factory. And then if Japan came and took it back, then it goes back to being a major factory, and it doesn't cost any money to do that. It just reverts to a minor if it's taken, and reverts back to a major if it's taken back. And again, if you're taking a factory or you're taking it back, you can't place units there that turn. You have to wait until the next turn, because you had to own it at the start of your turn. Okay, so those are factories, and there's just 2 different kinds of them. So then we go to bases, and there's 4 types of them. There's air bases and naval bases. So we have, I'm using this as an air base, but you can use tokens. You can use whatever you're using for an air base, right? So this is my air base. This is a shipyard. That's another one. Here's a naval base right here. And again, there's tokens available at Historical Board Gaming for all of these things. And this one here, like here's a token. I don't have anything for a submarine base. So this is a sub base token right here, right? So that's the 4 different kinds of bases. So what do they do? Okay, an air base. An air base is like it's got the runways and it's got the infrastructure that planes need and things like that. Like you can land your planes anywhere and take off from anywhere. But having an air base helps out, right? It gives support to the planes. It can be damaged up to 5 points of damage, just like a minor factory can. And any damage, like even 1 single point of damage, renders the benefits of that air base inoperable, basically. You can still land and take off, but you don't get the benefits of it. And the benefits are, there's a couple of them. So it extends the range of an aircraft by 1. But putting 2 air bases on there doesn't mean you get to extend it by 2. It's not like factories where you can put 2 factories on. You put an air base on, or you don't put an air base on. You don't start stacking them because they don't do you any good, right? So yeah, it'll extend your range by 1. Like these things here normally fly 4 spaces, so that one's going to get to fly 5 spaces now because he's starting at an air base. It's not where you end or somewhere in the middle, it's where you start from, and so he's starting where there's an air base, so he gets to go 5 spaces instead of 4. And the other thing is, you can scramble up to 3 aircraft to fight in a naval battle in an adjacent zone. So let's say another power came in and they attacked the Japanese Navy here. Well, these planes here, up to 3 of them, can scramble into the zone adjacent to it, where if they're on the airbase. Like if they were here, there's no airbase here, so they couldn't scramble into here. But because there's an airbase here, these 3 planes can scramble into this zone here, and that means that they can take part in this fight. They can't just go out there, you know, take one shot and then leave or anything. Like if they decide to go out there, then they're out there until the attacker calls off the battle. Like either he wins the battle, or he loses the battle, or he retreats. The defender doesn't get to retreat. I don't believe they do anyway. So anyway, that's the 2 advantages to having an air base, and they're both big advantages in the game. But one of the big differences between this game and Axis and Allies, if you're used to that game, is that you can't use your allies' air bases or naval bases or shipyards for that matter. Like if Germany had a plane on here, it doesn't get to go an extra space. It doesn't get to scramble out of there to fight in a battle. And Japan is kind of a bad example for that. But like if the Italians and the Germans over on the other side of the board there, they couldn't use each other's air bases and naval bases for their benefits, right? The only thing that you can use the base for, somebody else's base for, is for tracing a Lend-Lease path. And I showed you that in the last video where the Americans and the Far East Command were hooking up to do Lend-Lease, and they both had naval bases. So, but you can only use an air base if it's yours, or it belongs to an aligned miner, or you capture it. Like if you go, let's say Japan attacks Nanking down here, and they take Nanking over. Well, now Japan can use this air base because this belongs to Japan. But the other thing is, if it's an aligned neutral, like here's a neutral down here, right? There's Siam down here. So at some point in the game, Japan aligns Siam unless one of the allies come down and take it. So Japan just gets this and they get the people on it. Now if there's an air base here, then Japan can use that aligned air base. But not if it's just controlled though. Like if, we'll talk about alignment and control in a later video, but like say the Far East Command comes down here and attacks this but doesn't take them out, well then this becomes under the control of the Japanese, but Japan doesn't get to use their air base. Or if they had a naval base, they wouldn't get to use that either. It's only if you're aligned to that miner. In other words, you're putting your roundel on there and you're collecting their money. And if you're like me, then you replace their units with Japanese units because it's just easier to see that way what's yours and what isn't yours. Then you can use that air base or naval base or submarine base, any type of base, right? So that's air bases. Now a naval base, and there are 2 different kinds. There's naval bases and there's shipyards. So let's just bring this naval base out front here so we can see it a little better. And this is what I'm using for a shipyard, and this is what I'm using for a naval base. So a naval base, it can be damaged up to 5 points, just like an air base, and it's damaged in a tactical bombing raid. Same, it's like a strategic bombing raid, but it's called a tactical bombing raid. Okay, so a naval unit that begins its move at a naval base has its movement increased by 1, and multiple bases doesn't make you go more than 1, just like the air base, right? So any type of ship at all, Japanese ship, like these ones here, they normally go 3, so he would go 4 spaces from there. So 1, 2, 3, 4. He could go all the way to Hawaii from there because his movement is increased by 1. So that's the same as Axis and Allies when you increase it by 1 like that. And again, it's exactly the same rules as the air base. You can only use it if it's yours. You can't use it if it's your allies. You can't use it if it's just a miner that's under your control. You can use it if it's a miner that is aligned to you, or you can use it if you've captured it. But it has to be yours in order for you to use it. But again, as I mentioned earlier, you can use it, your buddy's airbase, for supply path. So let's just say, for instance, that these two nations here, like Japan is going, they wouldn't do this, but let's say they were going to give some supplies here, and like Japan owned this or something, or Germany owned this, then they can go through this naval base here to use for Lend-Lease. But that's the only case that you can use somebody else's naval base. I'm talking about your allies' naval base is just for Lend-Lease. Shipyard. Oh, another thing here. Sorry, before we get on to shipyards. They're placed in a sea zone they border. So here, let me just show you something here. This is a setup card for the game, right? Now, if you take a look here, see, like here's the shipyard, sea zone 38. Shipyard, sea zone 38 and 56. Here's naval base, sea zone 54. So it tells you the territory that it comes for, right? Korea. So you place it in Korea, but it's on sea zone 54. And that's important because you look here, see, here's Korea. Korea borders sea zone 54, and it borders sea zone 38 there. So you know by looking at the card there that you're supposed to put it in Korea on sea zone 54. And these can get knocked around a little bit, whether it's a token like this thing here or whatever. But you know, like if you got a token here, just make sure you kind of stick it half in and half out on the territory, because you need to know if it's in this territory or it's in this territory, because it depends on where those boats are and where they start from, whether or not they get that +1 in their movement capability, right? So that's how you would know where to place it. Is it'll tell you in the rules. And so if you're buying one as well, you have to state, okay, listen, I'm buying one for Korea and I'm going to put it in sea zone 54 here. Okay, so that you have to specify that, or it's specified in the setup chart. Okay, shipyards. Well, this is the thing here that I'm using for a shipyard down here. I think I'm going to get new ones though. I'm not happy with the way these turned out after I chopped them up. So I've ordered some other ones today, and they're pretty cool. You'll see them in a few weeks when they get in. Okay, so shipyard. So that's not just for, like a shipyard is exactly the same as a naval base. So think of them as being exactly the same thing. It does all of the things that a naval base does. This one here does everything that this one does, but there's more. Like a shipyard is like a kicked up naval base, right? So but it has to be connected via undamaged railroad to a major factory, and a major factory, of course, is required to be built in your home country, right? So you wouldn't be able to put a Japanese shipyard anywhere else, would you? Because it's not a supply path that it goes down. Like you can't go naval base to naval base. You have to go by railroad for a shipyard. So we have a major factory here, and we have a shipyard here, and there's a railroad that goes in between them. And that's, you know, assuming that this one wasn't here, right? It has to be connected to a shipyard. And that's why you will never see a shipyard down here in the Far East Command, because none of this is the UK's home country. We talked about that in the last video when we talked about the map. This is not home, even though there's a capital here, this is not a home country. This is a colony of the UK. So you can't put a major factory here, so you'll never be able to put a shipyard here, which means you're not going to be able to build capital ships, because capital ships, and you're talking about your battleships and your aircraft carriers, they have to be built at a shipyard. They can't be built at a naval base. Let me just read what I got here. And also, when you repair a capital ship, like let's say your ship becomes damaged somewhere, you have to make it back to where there's a shipyard, and then you will we'll talk about that later. You'll pay whatever the cost is that you need, and the cost will be different each time, because it depends on on what you roll. Like you're going to roll dice to see how damaged each ship is. So then you'll have to pay that amount of money at a shipyard on the first part of your turn, where it's the repair units phase. That's when you would repair a capital ship at your shipyard. A submarine base is right here. Okay, like you can put these anywhere as well. It's a naval base. It's the same as a naval base, except for when you extend your range by 1, it only works for submarines. Like you can't use a destroyer or a battleship and go 1 extra space at a sub base. You can only go 1 extra space at a submarine base. And I think that's about it for these bases here. Let me just scan through here. Okay, so we're going to get to the other facilities in 1 second. The next thing we're going to look at is the fortifications. So I'm using these bunkers here. I've also got some pillbox bunkers, but you can use it, like you can get a token that says fortification on it. But I'm using those bunkers because, well, that's how I roll. So a couple of things about bunkers or fortifications. I know I call it a bunker, but it's technically called a fortification. So what they're for, they defend like when somebody's attacking you and you have a bunker or a fortification, they defend on the first round of combat on a 5, like you're using 12-sided dice. So you would roll 2 of those, regardless of all the units and everything involved. That bunker itself gets to roll 2 dice, and you're rolling at 5 or less. But that's only for the first round of combat. And then, aside from that, all of the units that are in that territory that are involved in that assault get a +2 bonus. And that's it's not just infantry. It's your tanks, it's your artillery, it's your airplanes. It's what it represents. It doesn't actually represent a bunker. It represents that your forces are entrenched. You know, that they've had the time to set up and, you know, dig trenches in some cases, or build bunkers in other cases. They're ready for defense, right? So they're ready for you when you get there, and these bunkers or fortification ships, whatever you're using, are what represents that. So they're either on a land zone or a land-sea border. This is a bad example we're doing here in an island. Like here, you could say that the bunker is here, right? Like, so I'm defending from all 3 of these territories with this here. Or you can put it on the land-sea zone, or in some cases it can go on 2 sea zones like that. Here, let me just show you a case like that. So here, like Gibraltar has a naval base that's on 2 borders, 2 different territories, and they have a coastal artillery that borders on 2 territories. And it's kind of a special case in that when you put a fortification on there, it's such a small zone that it's for all of them. So let's just take this coastal gun here for a second, and I'll show you what it means here. So when you put a coastal gun on here like that, and it's got a naval base as well, I believe, then it's for both of these territories here. So it's for both of these bodies of water, Sea Zone 79 and Sea Zone 80. Both of these will work there. And then this is one of those special instances where one fortification protects it from the territories around it and from both sea zones. And there are a few places on the map where that happens. So where that is all islands that are not part of a home country of a major power. So everybody that's not Australia, Japan, Great Britain, everybody else that's on an island, if you put the bunker on an island, like if you put this bunker on this island, then that protects you from anything, right? It doesn't, you don't have to be protected just from land or from water. It's you're protected from everything. But there's that, and then there's Gibraltar, like I said. there's Panama. So if you put a bunker on Panama, then that protects you from the land being attacked either side, or from the water on either side. And what else? Malay. So we come over here to Malay. So there is a bunker that starts on this territory here. So that protects you from being attacked over land here, and it protects you from being attacked in either one of those sea zones. And the last place is all of the cities on the board. So any city where you have, like here's a city here, you know, any city, whether it's landlocked or not, it protects you from everywhere. You don't have to put it on a certain border and say that it's either protecting that border or protecting the coast. It's protecting you from any attacks anywhere. And you'll remember from the last video there where we had like mountain cities or mountains with rivers, and so there's two different terrains in the same zone. What you would do when you have a bunker, like say you had a bunker in a mountain territory, like this one, so normally units would be -1 defend going into there. You can't add them up, so it's not -1 and then these guys are +2. You have to pick one or the other. But because this is the first round of combat and this is the best one, so these guys would defend at +2 on the first round of combat, and then after that attacking would be -1. So you wouldn't go -1 and +2. You would just be even and -2 on the first round, and then -1 on the rest of the rounds, and not plus anything for the defender for that. Unless, of course, you're mountain infantry. Like, it just goes on and on, right? So that's special fortification areas and fortifications. And what's left? Oh, one other thing is you can't strategically bomb these, and you can't strategically bomb coastal artillery as well. Let me just bring that coastal artillery back over here. So it's in a specific zone, right? Like you're pointed in a specific zone. It's not just going anywhere. Like here in this territory here, it could be on the border here, and so it would cover both of these zones. But let's just say it's in this zone here. So if this gets attacked like an amphibious assault, and there's some transports in there, then what happens is your coastal artillery gets to shoot. You know how when there's an amphibious assault and you have boats in there, and there's a battle over the sea zone, and if it's successful, then the rest of them go into the land. Well, in this game here, you designate. Okay, so I've got these boats going after this. The boats out here, and then once that's done, then these boats over here are going after the land, and that's what the coastal artillery is going to shoot at. They're not going to shoot and help out in the naval battle. They're only going to shoot against the people that are involved in the amphibious assault. That means transports, even loaded transports. If you sink a loaded transport, then you're going to sink the stuff that's on that transport. But also in against anybody that takes a bombardment shot against you. Like you can shoot at battleships, and in this game, cruisers and destroyers also get to do bombardment if they want. So you can shoot that gun at whoever takes a shot at you. You're going to shoot back at them, and you get a maximum of 3. So it's kind of like an anti-aircraft artillery in that it doesn't matter how many boats are coming in. One coastal artillery gets 3 shots, and that's it. So in both cases with the fortifications and with the coastal guns, if you lose your territory there, like if somebody comes in and they take you out, and let's say China did it, what happens now is that this gets taken off the board, you know, and it doesn't come back if it goes back to Japanese. It's just, okay, that fortification's done. That territory was conquered. And the same thing, you know, like this is a Japanese coastal gun. If China comes in, takes out that territory, then that gun comes off. It's done. And it doesn't come back on if Japan retakes it. It's just done. And one more thing about these fortifications that I could have mentioned. Let's put it in this territory here. Let's say everything is off of there. You can't blitz through a territory that has a fortification. Like let's say this is a let's say that this is a Chinese territory and it has a fortification here. You can't blitz through here. You have to stop. So whether or not there are units here, let's say there are units there, and you manage to take them out on the first shot, on the first round of combat. So normally you would get to keep going and attack this one as well. That doesn't happen. The presence of this fortification negates your ability to blitz. Oh, let me just look in here, see if I'm forgetting anything. No, I don't think I am. Yeah, so that's it. Those are your facilities. You might have noticed this. Here I was using these things because I just love these. I just finished painting this one. I just thought I'd mention that Historical Board Gaming is selling both of these right now. Normally, like it's been a long time. I've been looking and looking and looking, and they've been out of stock forever. But they've got a bunch of these. This is the Super Yamato Battleship, and that's in the Battle Pieces section. The 3D printed battle pieces. It's the only one for Japan. It's called a Super Yamato. And this is the H-44 battleship, and they just got a bunch of these. So there's a whole bunch of them. And they're just huge. Here, let me just grab a Bismarck battleship, like an Axis and Allies one. Actually, I think this one is the Historical Board Gaming, which is the same size as the Axis and Allies. So look at the size difference with the H-44 and the Bismarck here. So if you're into heavy battleships, and the reason I bought them was because I bought myself an Iowa battleship off of Shapeways, and I love the fact that they're bigger because they're stronger than the other ones. Like they're bigger guns on them, and they're more powerful, right? You roll bigger dice for them, and so I like the fact that they're physically bigger on the board instead of just a different kind of sculpt that, you know, I can't see from when I'm way back here. Like when I'm way back here, I can see which one's bigger and which one isn't. I don't have to look and see that it has this type of mast or that type of mast, right? So here, like, this is your regular Yamato battleship from Axis and Allies. This is the Super Yamato. And there are rules for the Super Yamato, but I don't think I'm going to use those just yet because there are also rules just for a Yamato battleship. Like this is a Nagato battleship, so I'm going to use these ones as regular battleships. And then I'm going to use this for the Yamato because it's so much bigger than these ones and it's easier to spot, right? Like I can see that from across the board that there's a Yamato there. It's not just a Nagato battleship, not just a regular battleship. So anyway, I just thought I'd throw that out there that they do have the Super Yamato and the H-44 for sale right now. And I don't know for how long because you know how that works, right? They get 3D printed pieces and everybody runs in there and buys them and then you're SOL. So just thought I'd throw that out there. Anyway, those are your facilities. And I showed you on the setup charts. Yeah, that'll show you where they are. Oh, I could tell you, shipyards. If you're buying, there's 19 of these in the game. Naval bases, there are 55 of those. I'm just talking about the opening setups here, okay? So shipyards, and you're not going to buy many shipyards because, as you can see here, I showed you the production chart here. So a major factory, you have to $5, $5, $5, and $5, and then so like it's a lot of money, right? But a shipyard, same thing, and you move along until you place it on the board. If you're doing a factory upgrade, you have your minor factory, and then you start here, so $10, and you go from a minor to a major. But anyway, you're not going to build many shipyards in the game, so you will need probably 20. So there's 19 of these. There's 55 naval bases. There's 36 air bases. I'm not sure how many artillery, coastal artillery, and fortifications there are. I don't think I ever counted them. But there's not many of those in the opening setup. Like there's a few of them, probably 7 or 8 or something like that. But there's not many of them. And I'm just letting you know, just in case you were looking at purchasing them or something. The best thing to do is to look in the setup charts and just count them all up. It'll take you a while. You go through all of the different setup charts and you count up all of the bunkers, you know, or the fortifications or whatever you're looking for, right? Coastal subs. Anyway, so that's how you figure out how many you need. But I can tell you that's how many of these that you need. And as far as factories, there's no set amount that I can tell you what to buy. I can tell you that in the game that I just played, I didn't run out. But I mean, it's going to take time. Like, I'm going to have to play 10 games or so to find out, oh, geez, you know what? I'm going to need some more major factories for America or something, right? What I did was I bought 5 white ones. Like, this is the Japanese one. So I bought 5 white major factories, and I've got tons of minor factories. So I bought 5 major ones, and they're all white. So when I find out, okay, you know what, I am short of American factories, major ones, well, I'll paint up 1 or 2 of those. You know what I mean? I've always got cans of paint here, like when I'm finished painting the German units, there's usually some left in the can or something, right? So if I need another German one, I'll paint another German one. I just keep a few extras on hand. And you can use old factories too, you know, like say, okay, well, you know what, this is all of a sudden, this is a major factory. And then someday down the road, maybe you order it or something like that, right? Anyway, that's it. Got no more. General hand grenade. Take care, everyone.